Hi, my name is Ricky Oliveris, and I've recently moved here to Washington, D.C., where I've had to go through some really big changes. But that was nothing compared to a few years ago when I lived in the country of Thailand. But we'll talk more about that later. Welcome to Global Mission Snapshots.
Just before he went up to heaven, Jesus gave us a command. He gave us a mission. Jesus said, "Go. Go unto all the world, telling them of His love." This is our mission. This is our global mission.
Hello, I'm Gary Krause, and welcome to Global Mission Snapshots. Every year, hundreds of Adventists, young and old, answer the call to mission service as volunteers. Some may remember this as the old Student Missionary Program. Today, it's known as Adventist Volunteer Services, or AVS, because you don't have to be a student to serve as a volunteer, but you do have to be willing to answer that call to service. AVS calls include everything from teaching to physical education, from working on websites to creating videos. On today's program, two former volunteers will share some of their experiences. We'll also be talking with Pastor Tom Evans, who directs Adventist church planting through North America. Pastor Evans lives and breathes church planting, and I think you'll find his enthusiasm is contagious. But first up, let's visit a community near Atlanta, Georgia, where Pastor Bill Levin and his wife Jan stepped outside their church's four walls to be salt and light in their community.
Well, we're holding it in people's house, and then we began holding it here, outdoors. I know it's nice out. I usually drive a pickup. It's in for repair, so I've got a rental car, and bring the battery and the power inverter and run the light. We meet till about 10:30 in the evening. I'm divorced. My parents are dead. My sister's in Savannah, pretty much alone. And so this is something I look forward to every week.
We didn't come in here to tell them anything or with our own agenda. Our agenda was to hear them and to hear what their heart was, what their hurts are, their struggles are, and what was going on in their lives.
We're here in a community just north of Atlanta, and Pastor Bill Levin and his wife Jan have a ministry to the people in this community. Bill, for many years, has helped coordinate church planting and evangelism throughout the district, but he felt a special call to ministry, and he and his wife came here. They didn't know what God wanted them to do. They just walked the streets, they prayed, and slowly doors started to open. They started making friendships, and from there has built something quite beautiful as lives are being changed through their ministry.
We were looking for where God was leading us, and so we started praying. And we felt convicted that we needed to look for different avenues in this community in Forsyth County because we lived here. One of the areas was this area, Crystal Cove. When I was riding with a policeman, he identified this area as a troubled neighborhood. And as he was talking about Crystal Cove, he said, well, we've nicknamed this Crystal Meth Cove because we've busted so many drug labs here. And there's so many challenges in the neighborhood. He said most people in the homes here have been in jail at one time or another.
Today, the small ministry has been given a vacant lot in the neighborhood by the county government.
We'll end up with probably about 30, 40 people tonight. You come here for song, for fellowship, and then we get into a study and just sharing the word. And the study is about drawing the people out and letting them tell their story, tell what's going on in their life, tell their struggle, their issue, and being heard and being prayed over and loved on. And the people know that we're here to love them.
One of the first people Bill and Jan met during their prayer walking was Priscilla, and she's now a vital part of the team.
I had never seen anybody care that deeply about doing anything for the kids in this community because they were looked down on so bad. They were going to meet on the next Friday night for a unique style of church. Well, my husband had gotten turned away from the church. He didn't want anything to do with it. So at that time, I was desperately seeking for God to get us back into church, and because we were about to go through a divorce. And I was begging God to get us back to where we needed to be so that that divorce wouldn't happen. I had never seen church done that way. But it was the most beautiful thing too. I absolutely was drawn to it from that first Friday night.
As I talked with Priscilla, she told me more about mental, physical and sexual abuse in the community and the resulting drug and alcohol addictions.
Everybody that I've met is just chained down. And from what I find out after meeting them and talking with them is this has happened 3 and 4 and 5 generations down, that these abuses are rampant in these families. This community to me is like Esther in the Bible. It's like this Crystal Cove community is the Esther that he is raising up to bring his favor down on and to break the curses, the chains and the boundaries that are holding them, because it seems like everybody that I've met is just chained down. God has just brought all of us together and he's bonded us because we are from the same background, and he is showing us truly what Isaiah 61 and Luke chapter 4 is, that he's come to heal the brokenhearted.
The church needs to be doing the work of Jesus. The church needs to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We need to be salt and light in our communities. Crystal Cove is one community amongst thousands. If a church would be out doing this, what a difference we could make.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church began as a church planting movement. It has grown as a church planting movement, and it will only continue to grow as it remains a church planting movement. Do you think that's pretty close to the truth, Tom?
I think that's very accurate. In fact, there's a quote from Ellen White that says, "Upon all who believe, God has placed a burden of raising up churches."
Yeah, so it's not something that we just pass off to the experts. It's something that we should all be involved in.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, Tom, you head up church planting for the North American division of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. How central is church planting to the mission of the church?
I think some studies have indicated that those denominations that are going to grow are those that are planting churches. And so it's been part of how we started. In fact, we were a church planting movement. And we became distracted in that call and became focused on settling pastors over churches and so on. But the initial pastors were evangelists and church planters.
Mm-hmm. And so they would start the new congregation, make sure it was established, and then quickly move on and let the lay people care for it. Now, how did you begin getting involved in church planting?
When I attended seminary, I enjoyed a class by Russell Burrell, where church planting was one of the topics. And yet, when I got engaged in ministry, many of the demands of ministry became forefront, and somehow church planting didn't make it to the front. And so at one point I got a call from Texas to go and plant a church in North Dallas. And so I went ahead and felt like God was leading me to go and interview for that call, and went down and accepted a position to plant a church in North Dallas.
Now, did you go to a church planting training school before you went?
No, just basically what I had learned at seminary. One of the characteristics of a church planter is kind of an entrepreneurial spirit, and I knew that that was something that was part of my makeup, my DNA, so to speak. So it was very attractive to me. I was always thinking about where can we start something new, and so that was a good fit for me.
Now, tell us how the experience went. How did you start? What did you do?
Well, it didn't go as I'd planned.
Never does.
Somehow it had been veiled from me that the church that was going to be giving birth to this congregation was not actually very excited about it. I don't know how I missed that when I went down and interviewed, but I began to visit with the elders of the church, and it was after a couple visits I met with an elder, and he told me, I don't want to hear another word about church planting.
Wow.
So that was quite a devastating thing for me, because I just uprooted myself and my family and had relocated to Texas thinking I was going to be planting a church. And so that began a process of working with that mother church to create a climate, a condition in the church that was conducive to launching a daughter congregation.
And so you worked with that church, and then you did start to plant some new ones, right?
We, in fact, we did make some excellent progress. About 14 months later, in an elders meeting, the same elder walked out of the meeting and he said, this will be the first of many church plants that we do.
Wow.
And so we were able to launch our first church plant, and on opening Sabbath we had 550 people in attendance.
That's pretty impressive.
Well, it was a miracle, really, because the mother church decided to close down on Sabbath morning to celebrate the birth of their daughter congregation.
Isn't that great?
It was a very high Sabbath.
Fantastic. So what happened from there?
I think we have some photos of some other church plants that came from there. In fact, in a period of 11 years, that particular church planted 4 congregations. In addition, there were other churches that were influenced in the area to plant, and very soon we had 11 new churches in the area. Fantastic.
So what happens is that it catches on, it's almost contagious in the growth.
Yes.
Now tell me, share an experience of someone who came to know Jesus through the church plant.
I remember a lady, this is a very unusual circumstance that happened. One of our pastors was visiting in her home, and all of a sudden there was another voice that began to speak in the room. And they realized that there was some demonic activity that was going on with this lady. They purposely scheduled her baptism as the very last baptism of the day, just to make sure that nothing would happen that way. But she had actually been convinced that she needed to kill her own children by the devil. And by this church plant happening, her responding to the evangelism the church was doing, her life was completely transformed by Jesus. And it was really exciting to see when Jesus got a hold of her heart.
Oh yeah, wow. Now, church plants, the statistics show us that they tend to grow a whole lot faster than established churches. Tell us about that.
One of the interesting things that we noted, we began to do some studies to see what was the result that was taking place from these church plants that we were doing. And we discovered over the 8-year period of time that we had 11.6% annual conversion growth, baptismal growth, over 1,000 people, almost 1,100 people baptized during that period of time. And I believe it's because church planting, when it's done in a healthy way, is really focused on reaching the harvest, on growing. And many times in our established churches, we get focused on maintaining and just continuing what we've been doing. And when you're focused on growing, on reaching the harvest, reaching lost people, I believe God blesses that in powerful ways.
When you're starting a new congregation, you don't have to worry about fights among the church members or divisions or maintaining what you've got, because you've got nothing, right? So you're 100% on the community.
Yeah, well, the devil will still attack. Church planting has plenty of challenges that come its direction, simply because you're going into enemy territory.
Well, it's also very stressful for the church planter. This is not easy work.
No, it's not. And you need a prayer support team, and you need to be grounded spiritually yourself, and realize that it is God's work. It's not about us. God is the one that sustains you and strengthens you for it, because you will be challenged.
Now, is this only for pastors, or can lay people get involved in church planting?
Oh, it's, I believe we want to do all of the above. We need to plant a lot of churches. And so I'm for pastors planting churches, I'm for lay people planting churches, I'm for us working together to see a jet of light in every city and village.
Fantastic. Tom, thank you very much for joining us today. And viewers at home, please pray for those who are involved in church planting. It is a challenging, difficult mission field to start a new congregation. And also pray to see maybe God is calling you to be involved in some way in starting up new groups of believers for Him. I'd like to welcome Ricky Oliveris. Welcome, Ricky.
Thank you.
Now, Ricky, you're usually behind the camera rather than in front as a video producer for Adventist Mission. Mission is important to you. It's been part of your life. Why is mission important to you?
Mission is very important to me because it's something that I've learned to kind of grasp as I've gotten older. It's something that in my church was really important, and the members kind of implanted into me. And as I've done it more, I've seen the value in it and how reaching the people, in various parts of the world and even in the U.S. is important. We're supposed to lead people to God. It's our call from God.
Now, when you were a college student, you decided that you would accept a call to service to go to Thailand. What made you decide to do that? I mean, I'm sure you had a fairly comfortable existence as a college student.
Yeah, I enjoyed college very much. I felt very comfortable there, and somebody mentioned, being a student missionary to me one time, and to me that was something I was like, oh, that would be cool, but I don't know if I really want to do that. But I decided to pray about it, and the more I prayed about it, the more I was convinced that, God really wants me to go out there and do this, and I'm really glad that I did. It had a huge impact on my life.
In what way?
I think the biggest way that it had an impact on me is that I went over to Thailand thinking I was going to be doing video production, because that's what the call was for. And God worked on me and kind of broke my focus in a way and showed me that, yeah, I was going to do video production, but also God wanted me to do different things like medical, missionary work, which by no means I have any kind of qualifications for. God is the one who qualifies you to do all these things. And I'm not a preacher, but God wanted me to speak his words to the people of Thailand. So I found myself really doing more than I thought I was going to do. And if I had known that before, I would have been very nervous about it. But at the time, it was really a blessing to me to come back knowing that I'm capable of doing anything that he calls me to do.
Excellent. Now, I saw you working in the rice fields there. What was that all about?
Yeah, like I said, there are a lot of different ways that we witness to people, and one of the ways was just going and working in the fields with the people, and just kind of getting on their level and saying, I'm not better than you. I'm willing to come out here and just work with you and just be there and spend time with you. So that's one way of reaching people, is just spending time with them, getting to know them, mingling with them. So.
Fantastic. Now, did you have the opportunity to see anybody accept Jesus or see anybody's lives change while you were there?
Absolutely. We saw definite work in the people of Thailand. Sometimes you go somewhere and you plant a seed and you don't really see the result of the seed, which is fine. You have to be patient. God is working in his time. But I was fortunate enough to see people accept Jesus, and even a few people were baptized, and that's extremely rewarding to see that type of work being done, the result of your work, where people decide that Jesus is their Savior and they accept him for that.
Somebody watching this program may think, maybe I should try being a volunteer. What would you say to somebody who asked you, should I do it?
My first suggestion is to pray about it, pray a lot about it. And God is calling everybody in some way or another. And so if you feel that is the way that God is calling you, pray about it and, talk about it to somebody else, and go to the Adventist Mission website and look for more information and see how they can get involved in different parts of the world, or even in their area.
Now, in the intro to this program, you mentioned how you moved to Washington, D.C., and that was a cultural change, but it was nothing like when you went to Thailand. What sort of cultural adjustments did you have to make?
There were so many different cultural adjustments to go through, because Thailand and the U.S. are completely opposite countries. There's food, there's little cultural things that you need to be aware of when you go, such as you're not supposed to point your feet at somebody, or something little like that can offend people. So you need to kind of do your research, look to see how you can relate to the people and see what the best way to reach them is. But there are so many different cultural differences. You know, we're not used to their lifestyle, and so it takes time to adjust, but it's also a thrill in a way to be able to get to know the people there and how they live. And after being there, you know, I learned to really love it and appreciate their culture in different ways. So I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, often I talk to people who've been involved in mission service, and they talk about, yes, I was able to minister, but the people ministered to me as well. I learned. What did you learn from the people in Thailand?
Oh, I learned many things. I learned patience. It was one big thing, you know, because not everybody's on time, so we have to wait for people, and that was one big thing. But I just learned, you know, the people of Thailand are extremely kind, and it's nicknamed the Land of Smiles for a reason. People are very kind, and so it taught me, you know, I can be I can be friendly and to people I don't even know. You know, I grew up in the New York area, so to me, people are on the go, busy, you know, back and forth all the time, not really paying attention to the people around them. But going over there, complete strangers smile at you, they're friendly, and it was just a really nice thing to learn.
Fantastic. Ricky, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
And to our viewers at home, maybe after listening to Ricky talk about his experiences, you may be asking, well, perhaps I could be a volunteer. Well, perhaps you could. Go to adventistmission.org, have a look at the various opportunities that are available around the world. It may be teaching English as a second language in Korea. It may be going to Southeast Asia. Maybe God has some experience that He wants you to be involved in for Him. And while you're at our website, make sure that you take time to look at the videos, the photos, the stories, the inspiration of volunteers, missionaries, church planters, global mission pioneers. And please pray for volunteers around the world. It can be lonely, it can be discouraging, it can be very challenging, but it's very encouraging for them to know that there is a family of people around the world who are praying for them in their mission.
She used to convince her friends, you know, not to go to the center or not to go to church, you know, when the teacher would invite them.
Kelly McClurg was a social work graphic design student at Southern Adventist University in Tennessee when she decided to go to Thailand as a student missionary with Adventist Volunteer Services.
I actually didn't decide. God kind of decided that for me, you can say.
Kelly had friends who were going to Thailand, and they kept asking her to go with them.
I would see them every so often, but they would ask me, Kelly, do you want to come to Thailand with us next year? And I think you should come.
But Thailand was a long way from school and home, and Kelly wasn't sure that's where God wanted her to be.
I guess I couldn't really say no because I hadn't actually prayed about it, and I didn't know for sure if God didn't want me to go. So as I started praying about it, God kept revealing to me in subtle ways and then not so subtle ways that this is where He wanted me to be. So I said, okay, I'll go.
Kelly ended up in Bangkok at an Adventist outreach center in Thonburi. That's where she met Yui. Yui's parents ran a shoe store and were well known in the community. Yui used that influence to try and stop her friends from going to the center.
Sometimes she would even come on Sabbaths and, you know, or during school and just to see, you know, who came to class, so that after they left, then she would go talk to them and say, you know, this center is not really a good place. Maybe you shouldn't be going there.
But the Holy Spirit and people like Kelly were having an effect on Yui's heart.
But for some reason, she would keep coming, but also every time she would come, like if she came to church, you know, she would keep hearing the Bible and hearing, you know, Jackson teach about God, and she would hear the sermons, and then she would also, you know, feel the love around her of the other church members and the people, and so, you know, we have all seen a huge change in her life and her heart
Kelly and Yui became friends. They enjoyed talking together, shopping, just walking, and their favorite, eating ice cream.
Since I'm a people person, I've really enjoyed just getting to know people across the city, you know, and different ties from different parts of Thailand and from, you know, different backgrounds. Every person is so different.
While in Thailand, Kelly's job was to visit people whose lives have been changed by the various church planting projects across Bangkok. Kelly would write their stories to share with others so they could see how the Holy Spirit was touching hearts and changing lives in this vast city. Kelly returned to her home and school in the United States, and Yui, her story is still being written. Please pray for Yui and people like her in Bangkok and around the world.
Most Adventist volunteers will tell you that their time of service was life-changing, and maybe it could be for you too. To see currently available volunteer positions all around the world, just visit adventistmission.org and choose Serve and then Volunteer Openings. And while you're on our site, be sure to look at all the resources and stories for making mission come alive for your church or family. Each quarter, Adventist Mission produces an inspiring collection of video mission stories and reports for the Adventist Mission DVD. If you live in North America and you'd like a free sample copy of this DVD, just call or visit our website and ask for Adventist Mission DVD or offer number 303. Don't forget to clearly state your name, full address, and be sure to mention Adventist Mission DVD or offer 303. Again, to receive your free sample copy of the Adventist Mission DVD, just call the toll-free number on your screen, 1-800-648-5824, and ask for the Adventist Mission DVD or offer 303. Or you can just visit our website at adventistmission.org/offer 303. Well, that's it for today's program, and I hope that you've been inspired and maybe even challenged by what you've seen and heard. Thank you again for your continuing support of Global Mission with your prayers, your financial support, and your personal involvement. Until next time, I'm Gary Krause. God bless.